In 1943, a young pilot vanished over France. 60 years later, hikers found his rusted P-51 in a Belgian forest. No burn marks, bullet holes from below, and a sealed envelope still dry. When his grandson opened it, the military called and told him to stop. Tonight, we follow the map inside and the name someone spent decades hiding. Adrian Cole had been filling a requisition box when his desk phone buzzed. He capped his pen, glanced at the display, and answered the way Dover trained him to. Captain Cole, Inspector Arnaud Leclerc, Belgian Federal Police. The voice was careful, mid-50s, a slight French R. We've located an aircraft wreck in the Ardennes. Your database suggests U.S. Army Air Forces, 1943. The pilot of record is Lieutenant Robert Harlow. Adrian's pen stopped above the form. Harlow pressed on his chest like a hand. What type of aircraft? He asked. A P-51, or what remains of one, Leclerc said. Rusted. Nose down into a slope. No fire damage. Unusual bullet impacts along the port side. Unusual how? From below and behind. Not the typical pattern from an aerial attack. More consistent with low altitude and ground fire. Paper rustled on Leclerc's end. We logged the tail as 43 to 73,127. Coordinates: 50.06, 21 degrees N, 5.7438 degrees E. Deep forest, no road access. Adrian pulled the JPAC registry and typed. The serial populated a file he had never seen open, grayed out, banded with a classification banner that sat above his clearance. The screen read, Restricted Historical Review. Personal effects? He asked. In the cockpit, Leclerc said. A leather wallet with identification for Lieutenant Harlow. 2 photographs, one of a young woman, one of a unit group. And a sealed packet with U.S. military stamps. It appears waterproofed. We have not opened it. Please don't, Adrian said. Secure everything in place. No removal without chain of custody photos. Already standard procedure, Leclerc replied. Captain, there is another detail. The wreck is roughly 200 miles from what your public records call a routine reconnaissance corridor over northern France. If your lieutenant was on that mission, this location makes little sense. Routine. The word had been a splinter in his family for 60 years. I'll be on the next flight to Brussels, Adrian said. Keep the site tight. No civilian access. If anyone arrives claiming authority, call me first. Understood, Leclerc said. I will text you the coordinates and a map overlay. Adrian set the receiver down and stared at the screen. The file's lock bar looked like a door with no handle. He tried the cross-reference index, the squadron roll, the mission list for late September 1943. Each path ended with the same banner. He opened his desk drawer and touched the showbox. The penciled note lay on top, the paper thinned by years. Back soon. Save me a dance. He slid the scrap into his breast pocket and felt it settle there, small and warm. The secure line blinked. He lifted it. Colonel Redding, a woman's voice said. Maya, he answered. Belgium located a P-51 registered to Lieutenant Robert Harlow. Ardennes, tail 43 to 73,127. No burn. Bullet strikes from low and behind. Wallet photos, a sealed packet. A pause. Send me the coordinates. He forwarded Leclerc's text the moment it arrived. /long elevation, satellite tile, a red X in a sea of trees. Redding's reply came in shorter sentences. I see the location, Captain. We're not discussing this on an open line. I'll request access to the historical review. Do not email details elsewhere. Book your flight. Call me wheels up. What does historical review mean on my screen? Adrian asked. It means someone above me has been looking. I'll call you back. She cut the line. Adrian moved through the checklist he knew by muscle memory. Travel portal. Next available to Brussels. Field kit. Evidence bags. Spare batteries. Camera. He printed the chain of custody template and slid it into a hard folder. His phone vibrated again. Belgium +32. Captain Cole, Leclerc said. One more note. The hikers who found the wreck were off a marked trail by chance. If they had not cut through a thicket, the reflection would have been missed. The site is concealed by terrain and growth. How far to the nearest road? 3 kilometers at least, perhaps more. We have posted the area. Gendarmes are rotating. And the packet? In an evidence safe, Leclerc said. Sealed. Photographed in situ. We will wait for your authorization. But you should know. Someone will ask us to open it. Someone always does, Adrian said. Until I arrive, they don't. He hung up and looked at the clock. 90 minutes to boarding. He wrote a short note to himself on the chain of custody form. No fire equal force landing. Low hits equal ground contact. Why Ardennes if recon north free? He circled the question and underlined why twice. He checked the weather for Brussels. Light rain. He checked the time difference. He checked the note in his pocket and pressed it once, a habit that steadied his hands before fieldwork. On his way out, he passed the framed photo of Eleanor at a summer fair. The glass was cool. He touched the edge and kept walking. The base parking lot smelled like wet concrete and old fuel. The transport lifted somewhere behind clouds. Adrian unlocked his car and set the hard case on the passenger seat. The dashboard clock ticked in small blue numbers. His phone chimed. Not a call. A text. Unknown number. 2 words. Stop digging. The forest smelled like wet iron and leaf mold. Adrian followed the red tape through beech and fir until the trees opened onto a scar of earth where the slope had given way decades ago and then healed over it. The wreck sat nose down, tail up, ribs of wing showing under moss like an old knuckle. Leclerc waited beside a tripod camera. We've logged entry and time, he said, offering gloves. Please keep to the path. Adrian pulled the gloves on. The air was cool enough to sting his throat. No scorch marks. No melted rivets. The skin of the fuselage wore rust and lichen, not fire. Impact first, Leclerc said, pointing with a capped pen. Engine buried. Gear up. She hit hard, but there was no burn. A tech in a blue jacket crouched by the port side with a laser angle finder. Circles of chalk marked holes in the metal where daylight showed through. Angles? Adrian asked. Low and rearward, the tech said. He tapped a chalked hole. Entry ovals lean up. Metal spall inside leans forward. Not air to air. More like ground fire while the aircraft was low. Leclerc nodded. We found a shallow tree creased 90 meters back. He may have skimmed the canopy before striking here. He pointed along the slope. No sign of explosion. The soil and growth pattern support that. Adrian stepped closer. The canopy frame had collapsed inward, but the seat and instrument panel were still there, ghosted with mud. A harness strap crossed the seat back, buckle fused by rust. He swallowed. Photographed in situ? He asked. Every angle, Leclerc said, and handed him a tablet with time-stamped images. Then we removed surface debris with soft tools. When we cleared the cockpit, we found these. He led Adrian to a folding table under a tarp. On a steel tray lay a leather wallet, cracked but intact, 2 photographs in protective sleeves, and a sealed packet wrapped in oiled cloth and tied with a narrow canvas tape. The packet's outer layer was beaded with old water and still shed the new. Adrian's hands shook once, then steadied. He set the chain of custody form on the table and wrote the date, time, weather. He logged each item as Leclerc called them out. Wallet ID for Lieutenant Robert Harlow, blood type O positive, Leclerc said. Photograph 1, young woman, likely spouse or sweetheart. Photograph 2, unit group at a British airfield. Packet, marked with U.S. stamps and the words, eyes only. Adrian bent toward the packet. The cloth was embossed by something beneath it, edges and corners, the raised ghost of paper sealed from weather. A small split along one fold showed wax under cloth, and, beneath the wax, a pale corner of paper with pencil lines crossing at right angles. Grid. The edge of a sketch. His heartbeat ticked in his ear. Belgian procedure is clear, Leclerc said, watching him. We do not open foreign military documents without formal transfer or a judicial order. But your embassy has called 3 times since morning. They are eager. Who called? Adrian asked, eyes still on the packet. The defense attache's office. Then someone who did not give a title. Leclerc's mouth thinned. He used the phrase, urgent national security. He suggested opening the packet for safety. I told him we can X-ray first. He did not like that answer. Good answer, Adrian said. He picked up the wallet. The leather squeaked. Inside, the ID card showed Bobby in uniform, eyes young and steady. Behind the card, a small paper had fused to the leather and lifted like skin. He set the wallet down and wrote its condition in the form. He studied the photographs. In the first, a woman smiled into sunlight. Hairpin, dress simple. Eleanor. He knew that dress from the mantel at home. He put the sleeve back as if it could break. The second photo showed a line of men before a hangar. Mixed uniforms. One man in civilian clothes at the edge. Adrian squinted. British cap, U.S. jacket, a free French insignia. Not all pilots. He logged it and slid the sleeve under the weight of the tray so wind would not lift it. May I see the impact path? He asked. Leclerc led him along the chalk flags. The ground was spongy with decades of needles. Here and there, small shards of metal winked under moss. At the tree crease, bark had grown over an old wound, a long-healed gouge that still ran at an angle. Adrian crouched and pressed his palm to the scar. Cold. He closed his fingers and opened them again. What do you think? Leclerc asked. I think he stayed low on purpose, Adrian said. And I think he wasn't flying the route the record says. If you were coming back from northern France, you don't end here by mistake. They walked back to the tarp. Rain began in a light sift, the kind that made sound on nylon, but not on soil. The tech zipped a camera in a bag and checked the evidence safe, an aluminum case with 2 locks. Leclerc's phone buzzed. He took the call, listened, and held the phone against his shoulder. Again, he said to Adrian, dry. The embassy. They have a courier 20 minutes out. They are asking to take custody. Not without a bilateral form and my signature, Adrian said. And not before we log, X-ray, and copy. You're the lead authority on Belgian soil. Leclerc nodded into the phone. You heard the captain. Proper paperwork or no transfer. Yes. I understand your concern. So do I. Good day. He ended the call. They will arrive anyway. Adrian exhaled. He flipped to the second page of the chain of custody and added X-ray prior to opening in block letters. His hands had steadied fully now. Work did that, steps in order, pens that worked, forms with boxes. He leaned over the packet again. The canvas tape was stamped where it crossed, a faint purple ink that had bled into the weave. He read the words as they came up under the light. Eyes only. Under the split in the cloth, the pale corner showed more clearly. Pencil lines on thin paper, the curve of a river sketched in a shaky hand, a tiny triangle like an arrowhead where lines met. A map, small and human, trapped under wax. He reached for the evidence-safe key. Let's get this to X-ray, he said. Behind them, through the trees, He heard a car fighting the mud, tires, a quick horn, voices. Pressure had arrived on a schedule of its own. Adrian slid the packet into the safe, closed the lid, turned the locks until they bit, and wrote the time. Outside the tarp, the forest took the rain back. The wreck stayed where it had waited. The envelope waited, too, stamped by a directive and the weight of 60 years, a corner of a hand-drawn map, trying to breathe through cloth. They moved the packet under gray light to a mobile lab the gendarmerie had parked at the trailhead, white van, generator hum, X-ray unit bolted to a steel table. LeClaire logged the transfer time aloud while a tech photographed each handoff. The forest smell gave way to disinfectant and warm circuitry. Non-destructive scan first, LeClaire said. Then we decide. Adrian stood with his palms flat on the counter to stop the tremor. It passed. Work steadied him. The tech slid the oiled cloth bundle into a sleeve and fed it under the X-ray head. A thin tone rose, then settled. The monitor filled with ghost shapes. Paper, folded several times, the tech said. Wax disc here. See the denser ring? And pencils or staples, small metallic shadows along the edge. On screen, a rectangle sat within a rectangle. Cloth, then wax, then stacked sheets. In one sheet, a dark triangle like an inked arrow pointed to a bend in a line that could only be a river. Adrian leaned in until his breath fogged the glass. That's a map, he said. LeClaire nodded. We opened under camera. Belgian protocol. The camera's red light glowed. LeClaire cut the canvas tape at its knot, careful as a surgeon. The purple stamp bled into his glove. Eyes only. Beneath the cloth lay wax, brittle with age, impressed with a small crest and 3 letters worn down by time. LeClaire set the seal in a tray, scored the edge, and lifted the lid. Under it, paper exhaled, thin, onion-skinned sheets that had waited for air. Adrian's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Last warning. Don't. He turned the screen face down and kept his eyes on the paper. LeClaire read the first header for the camera, each word slow. Joint Allied Staff. Special Duties Branch. Classification. Ultra. Compartment L. Distribution. Eyes only. He slid the top sheet to Adrian with tweezers. Typed lines marched down the page, clean and cold. Operation Larkspur. Primary objective. Extraction of high-value intelligence personnel from German detention facility Ardennes sector, herein referenced as Station 17C. Secondary objective. Denial of facility to enemy methods discretionary. Flight route. Modified to avoid radar concentrations. Approach at low altitude. Egress via Belgian interior. Pilot. LT Robert Harlow, 357th FG attached. Special duties. Status. Volunteer. Mission category. Non-standard. Personnel status. Expendable asset. Authority. Joint Allied Staff. Compartment L. Cover story. Routine reconnaissance over northern France. Adrian read the line twice, then a third time. Expendable asset. The words detached from the page and hung in the air between them. He was too good a pilot to be lost on a simple run. Eleanor had said across so many winters that the sentence had become part of the house. The memory arrived whole, like a voice behind him. He closed his eyes for one heartbeat and opened them again. LeClaire slid out the second sheet. List of names, he said. 4 columns. Adrian read them. LTCDR Arthur Penrose RN, Cryptography. Capt. Eddie and Moreau FFI Liaison. FLTLT Harold Pike RAF, Photo Recon. Sergeant Francis Calder U.S. Signal Corps. The name pricked him. Each line ended with a location and a barred notation, 17C. A few were struck through in red pencil with a date beside them. A small column labeled status alternated between H, I, and X. Someone's code that did not need to explain itself. The third sheet was a hand-drawn map, pencil in a steady hand. A river curved through notations in English and German. Rail spurs, a square labeled admin, a dotted line that slipped from a kitchen block to a culvert. In the lower right, the smallest neat script named a triangle at the edge of the forest. Extraction Point Alpha. Beside it, coordinates. Leclerc compared them to the GPS overlay he'd printed from his text to Adrian. He held the pages together against the light. "It matches," he said. "Exactly." Adrian felt the room tilt a degree and settle again. The wreck had not been a mistake in a sea of trees. Bobby had been flying toward a marked place someone had drawn on thin paper with a pencil and intent. His phone vibrated at his elbow. Another text, same number. "You open it. You own it." He did not touch the phone. The camera whirred softly in the corner, patient as a witness. Leclerc lifted the next sheet. "Supplemental directives," he read. "Radio call sign protocols. Counter-interrogation cues. Destruction procedures, if capture imminent." He flipped to the bottom line and frowned. "Classification tags. These are above my clearance." He turned the page so Adrian could see the stamp. Compartment L, authorities required 08 and above. The letters looked familiar, in the way doors can look familiar when you've only ever seen them from the wrong side. Adrian remembered the gray banner on his JPAC screen, Restricted Historical Review. Someone with reach had been inside this file for years. Fingerprints nowhere. Leclerc sealed his mouth for a moment, a habit of men who choose their words before they let them out. "Captain, I will notify the examining magistrate. This is no longer simple crash evidence. This is a wartime special operation with live heat. Call your magistrate," Adrian said, "and document everything twice." He took a photograph of the Larkspur header with the lab camera, not his phone, and handed the device back to the tech. The act felt like lifting something heavy from one shelf to another. He could feel the weight move. Leclerc set one last paper on the pad, a small, typewritten note stapled to the corner of the briefing, the staple leaving a brown comet in the age-spotted margin. Personnel note pilot. LT Harlow briefed fully on operational risks. Consents to category. Expendable asset designation acknowledged. No rescue provision authorized. Debrief contingency, nil. Adrian stared at the words until they separated into their parts, like metal filings shaken out to show the shape of a magnet. He heard Eleanor again, soft and certain, arguing with a telegram the way you argue with weather. Outside, the generator coughed and settled. In the doorway, rain lined up like beads on the van's rubber mat. Leclerc spoke to someone on his phone in quick, clipped French. The tech adjusted the camera to catch Adrian's face as well as the page. His other phone, his personal one, the one with the showbox note warm against it, buzzed again on the counter. "This is your last chance. Walk away." Adrian didn't reach for it. He placed his finger under the line expendable asset and felt the papers nap under skin. For a second, his hand shook again, and then stopped. "Document the note," he said. The camera clicked. The word expendable sat in the frame, plain as a nail in a board. He didn't look at the phone when it buzzed again. He didn't have to. The warning had already arrived. And so had the part of the story that didn't fit on any routine line. The University of Liege archives felt like a cool church for paper, high windows, dust held in light. Dr. Anouk D. Wilde met them at the desk with a lanyard and a calm that came from years of saying, "Let's see what the documents say. You asked for POW installations in the Ardennes, 1943, she said, leading them to a climate room. "Officially, there is no Stalag 17C in this sector." She set a cart beside a long table. Unofficially, records disagree with that sentence. She unlocked a gray box and lifted out a folder the way a medic handles glass. German script, rubber stamps, neat tables. Captured Wehrmacht files, she said. Inventory recovered after the war. Cross-indexed with Belgian resistance reports. Adrian took a seat, pen ready. The hum of the air system steadied him. Anouk opened a ledger to a page with thin ruled lines. Look here, administrative euphemism. The term isn't stalag. It's Samelstel 17C, collection point. A way to hide a small, high-value camp inside paperwork for transit depots. Station 17C, Adrian said, hearing the echo from Larkspur. The briefing called it a station. Exactly. She slid over a second file, typed German, stamped in purple with an eagle. Movement order, dated September 30th, 1943. Evacuation of 17C. All prisoners transferred. Destination not listed. Adrian wrote the date. The mission sheet in the van had put Bobby's flight on the 28th. 2 days apart. It lined up too neatly to be an accident. Leclerc stood at the end of the table. If the camp was evacuated 2 days later, someone knew to clear the board. Or someone warned them. Anouk said, neutral. She opened another folder, this one labeled in French. Resistance Diaries. Collected from local units after liberation. You'll find them uneven. But when entries line up with German dates, we trust them. She flipped pages until she found a tight, slanted hand. A ribbon flagged the spot. Here, entry for 28 September. She read in French, then translated as she ran her finger under the lines. The larks are flying into a trap. Adrian looked up. Larks. Your operation codename was Larkspur, Anouk said. Underground writers were poets and pragmatists. They cut codenames to feathers. She tapped the line again. This suggests foreknowledge. The next entry mentions extra guards and an unusual number of officers arriving by rail the day before. Leclerc paced once and came back. If they expected an extraction, they prepared to catch it. Anouk brought out a thin folder stamped Verkeersleitung rail control. Train manifest from a secondary spur near Hoefeleis. Officer car attached to a freight 27 September. She set it beside the evacuation order. Then this, another page, another purple stamp. Sticker Heights for Lagong, security relocation. 30 September. Adrian's pen paused. Pride rose first. Bobby had not been lost on a lazy loop over northern France. He had flown into a design point on a map drawn by careful hands. The anger came next, clean and simple. Someone had known. Someone had arranged the board, so his grandfather's move would be met. He set the pen down and tapped the margin of the evacuation order. Who signed this? Initials only, Anouk said. KH, regional staff. We can try to connect them, but initials are a habit of people who knew they might lose later. Adrian smiled without humor. I've seen that habit on our side too. Anouk closed the German files and pulled a blue folder. Now the thing that does not exist. She held up an index card. Allied POW camp list for 1943. No 17C in Ardennes. The number is assigned on paper to a transit camp near Vienna. So officially, no such camp here, Leclerc said. Officially, Anouk agreed. But look at the inspection routes. She laid a thin map over the table, red cross paths, spring 43 to winter 43. The lines detoured around a blank square in the Ardennes. No notation. Just a hole where a camp would be if anyone admitted it. An administrative blind spot, Adrian said. More like a deliberate curtain, she said. His phone buzzed against the table, unknown. He flipped it face down. The van text had taught him enough to read the timing without reading the words. Anouk turned to another page in the Resistance diary and marked a paragraph with her nail. The same hand. Same day. Listen, new officer brought into the kitchens. English words overheard. A plan to use the drainage culvert. Extra guards at the perimeter after midnight. If there is a sign from the forest, we will move. But the guards moved first. Leclerc let out a slow breath. "You're covert, Captain." Adrian nodded. "Frank," he caught himself. He did not have the man's last name yet, just a list from Larkspur. Sergeant Francis Calder. The prickle of that name returned, sharper now. Anouk's cart had one more box. She lifted a thin notebook with a cracked spine, the leather worn soft by a careful hand. Inside, a small pressed flower fell onto the table. She set it gently aside and read the last page. "This is the entry for 29 September, she said. "We heard an aircraft fall before dawn. Forest patrols moved toward the slope. Later, word came that an American pilot was taken, then lost to wounds. We did not find his body. At dusk, men from the village brought a stretcher from the north path. They said only, he came for the larks. We buried him at the forest's edge with military honors. We marked the tree. The Germans searched 3 days and did not find the place. The room went quiet except for the hum and the soft tick of air on vents. Adrian felt the pride and anger knot together. Bobby had not been a line on a list. He had been a man who hit trees and stayed low and carried a packet that still had pencil on its corner. He had been caught. He had been buried by people who understood the difference between routine and sacrifice. Leclerc broke the silence. Does the diary name the tree, the path? Anouk scanned the margin. There is a sketch, not to scale. She turned the book so they could see. A bend and a stream. A triangle marked stone. A cross on a tree drawn with one firm stroke. Adrian took a photo for the case file, then for himself. He wrote a single line in his notebook. He was not lost. He was found, then honored. He reached for his phone, half expecting another warning. The screen stayed dark. For a moment, that felt worse. Anouk closed the diary, hands careful. Officially, the camp did not exist, she said. But the paper knows how to tell the truth if you let it speak in pieces. Adrian nodded. Pieces are enough. Anouk slid the notebook toward him again and tapped the last line. There is a name in the witness list attached to this diary, she said. An American signals sergeant who survived. He gave this account in 1945, then disappeared from our records. What's his name? Adrian asked. She checked the card. Francis Calder, she said. And according to a later note, he returned to Belgium once, many years later, to visit the pilot's tree. Adrian looked at the small cross drawn on paper and felt the floor tilt that same slow degree. Somewhere in these stacks, the next page was already waiting. Frank Calder opened the hotel door on the second knock. He was thin under a good wool sweater, the kind of thin that comes from years that took more than they gave. His eyes were clear. You look like him, he said before Adrian could speak. Around the eyes. Bobby had that same steady look when he was deciding something. Adrian swallowed. I'm Adrian Cole. I know, Frank said. Come in, bring your detective. He nodded past Adrian to Inspector Leclerc in the hallway. You'll want a witness. The room smelled like boiled coffee and old wood. A portfolio lay on the table with its corners rounded from use. Frank eased into the chair and set both hands on the leather. I have told this story 3 times in my life, he said. No one believed me the first 2. Adrian sat. He took out the recorder, set it between them, and said the date and time. Leclerc stood by the window with the curtain tipped, watching the street. Frank tapped the portfolio. We heard the crash before dawn. A long scrape, and then nothing. Patrols moved toward the slope. They came back with talk, but no body. That part never made sense to me, not then. He drew a breath. It shook once. He steadied it with a sip of coffee. Bobby got into the camp just after midnight, he said. Don't ask me how. I was the ranking Allied NCO inside. He found me in the kitchens, small room, bad light, smell of boiled cabbage and lye. He knew the layout. He'd memorized our map. He used the phrase I was told to listen for. What phrase? Adrian asked. The old man closed his eyes, seeing it. He was wet to the waist, mud on his sleeves, but his voice was steady. He said we were taking the drainage tunnel under the kitchen, one at a time, 2 nights running. We had 6 to move, 4 high value, 2 handlers. He had a point man outside in the trees. Signal would be a low whistle, 3 notes. He lifted 3 fingers and let them fall. LeClaire glanced over. The culvert. Frank nodded. It was narrow and slick. Led to a culvert at the fence line, then into the ditch by the east track. He had routes from there. Safe houses, a cart, even a code for bread at a bakery beyond the spur. You could tell he'd studied. You could tell someone had studied him back. He looked at Adrian. The Germans were ready. They knew the timing. They knew the tunnel. When we sent the first man, Penrose, through the grate, we heard boots at both ends. The kitchen door slammed. 2 MPs took me down. Bobby went for the grate. God, he was fast. But the outside end was already covered. They brought him and Penrose to the admin block. Adrian felt his grip tighten on his pen. He wrote both ends covered and underlined it. How do you know what happened next? He asked. We had a barracks window facing the offices, Frank said. Small, dirty glass, but you could see the light. They kept it on all night. At dawn, they carried something wrapped in a tarp toward the motor pool. I believe it was Penrose. Bobby, I didn't see him again until later. Frank opened the portfolio and slid out a thin plastic sleeve. Inside, onion skin paper with penciled lines and a signature that made Adrian's chest tighten. This is his last radio note, Frank said. He wrote it while he was still free in the camp. He'd found a document in the commandant's office, a German report with our frequencies, our routes names. He knew the leak had a face. He wrote the code name. Adrian read, lips moving as if to steady the words. Kestrel compromised. Germans aware of extraction protocols. Station 17C prepared before arrival. Investigate all missions authorized under Kestrel Channel. LTR. Harlow, 0245, September 28. He set the page down, careful not to smear the old pencil. Kestrel, he said. You're sure? Frank's mouth thinned. He said it like a curse at a fact. He told me, if I go down, get this back to someone who can read it out loud. I have been trying for 60 years. LeClaire cleared his throat softly. Monsieur Calder, how did he intend to transmit this? Frank's eyes moved to the portfolio again, then to the window. He stood, slow and deliberate, and crossed to the curtain where LeClaire had left a small gap. He looked down at the street for a long breath. 2 men across by the bakery, he said. Dark coats. Not talking. Watching the door. He let the curtain fall back into place. You brought a shadow with you. Adrian's skin went cold along his neck. He resisted the urge to look. He kept his voice even. We've had messages, he said. Warnings. Good, Frank said. That means you're pointing at the right part of the board. He returned to the table and sat. The shake in his hand was back. He flattened it with his other palm. Bobby had a handheld, he said. Small. New for 43. He used it to reach his contact. Your people called him a bird name once. Not anymore. Bobby tried to warn him. The reply proved the contact was the leak. Kestrel answered, Adrian said. Kestrel answered, Frank repeated. Cool as a ledger. Bobby changed plans on the spot. He wrote the note. He tried to move 1 man anyway. We know how that ended. He looked at Adrian again, right into him. You have his eyes. He looked right through bad ideas. He didn't blink much when it mattered. Adrian felt the praise like a weight and a promise. Frank, he said, why did the Germans evacuate 2 days later? Because they had what they needed, Frank said. Or because someone told them the sky was getting loud. We heard trucks for hours. Names read. Men moved. After the war, I came back once. There was a tree at the forest's edge with a mark cut into it. The villagers had buried someone there. They said he came for the larks. LeClaire wrote the phrase and boxed it. The room's small clock ticked. A knock sounded from a room down the hall, then a door closing, then the slow hush of hotel carpet noise. The two men outside didn't move. Frank reached into the portfolio and undid a second flap with a tremor that belonged to age and anger both. He lifted out a wrapped bundle the size of a book, oiled cloth gone dark with time, corners taped and retaped. He set it on the table and breathed once, as if putting down a stone he'd carried too long. "I've kept this since 1945, he said. "I promised your grandfather I would give it to the right person when the right day came." He folded back the cloth. Inside lay a compact radio transmitter, dials pitted, code key scarred, the metal catching the weak hotel light. "Bobby's set," Frank said. "The one he used that night." The street outside stayed quiet, as if holding a breath. The transmitter sat between them like a small, still engine that wanted only one thing: to be turned on. The U.S. Embassy in Brussels looked like a glass box that decided to be a fortress. Adrian cleared security, surrendered his phone, and followed a Marine through bright halls that smelled like carpet glue and new paint. LeClaire waited downstairs with the signed visitor log. "I'll be here," he said. "If you are not back in an hour, I'm coming up." Two men met Adrian in a conference room that looked borrowed from a hotel. Long table, tray of bottled water, no windows. The first wore rimless glasses and the tidy calm of a man who never raised his voice. "Dear Thomas Vale," he said, offering a cool hand. "State Department, Historical Classification Review." The second smiled without warmth. "Alan Pierce." "Same office." They sat. A woman joined a moment later with a folder under her arm. "Call Maya Redding." She nodded to Adrian, but didn't sit. "I'm observing," she said, and stepped back to the wall. Vale set a leather folder on the table and opened it to a page with a blue flag in the corner. "Captain Cole, first, thank you. These matters are delicate. You've been cooperative." "I've turned over nothing," Adrian said. "Belgian custody, Belgian law." "Of course," Vale said, unbothered. "We're here to resolve that before it becomes complicated." Pierce slid a document across the table. "This is a receipt acknowledging transfer of materials related to a wartime deception operation codenamed Larkspur. You will read in a moment that certain appearances were intentional. I know what you've seen. It can look like betrayal. In truth, it was counterintelligence." Adrian didn't touch the paper. "A deception op that labeled a pilot expendable asset and sent him to a camp the records say didn't exist." Pierce's smile did not change. "Words serve different functions in different compartments. The term expendable has legal meanings that don't translate well to family language." "Family language," Adrian repeated, the phrase scraping. He saw his grandmother's small kitchen, the extra chair no one sat in. He saw the triangle flag. "Where in your compartments does the chair go, Mr. Pierce?" Vale cleared his throat softly, keeping things moving. "Captain, the aim of Larkspur was to mislead German intelligence about our true capabilities. Some assets were positioned to fail on paper so we could succeed in other theaters in fact. Difficult choices. They saved lives. They cost one," Adrian said. "I have his name." "You have a piece of his story," Vale said. "We have the rest. If you sign the receipt, we can brief you properly. We can also correct the record. Recognition, posthumous. Full honors for your grandfather in Arlington. A commendation for you. And," he paused as if picking something up without using his hands, "a settlement for your family's long uncertainty." Pierce slid a second sheet forward. It was crisper than the first. Standard non-disclosure. "You'll agree not to disclose details of Larkspur or related compartments." In exchange, you'll be fully included in the ceremonial closure your family deserves. And if I don't sign? Adrian asked. Pierce folded his hands. Then we will have to address your recent access to classified materials outside proper channels. The Belgian police have already notified us that you were present when sealed U.S. documents were opened. That is awkward for everyone. Everyone, Adrian said. Just not the man who died. Redding shifted her weight against the wall, arms tight across her folder. Vale glanced at her and back at Adrian. No one here wants to make trouble for you. Truly. We want to bring this to a dignified conclusion. You want me to hand you the packet, the photos, the list of names, and the note that says Kestrel was the leak, Adrian said. Vale's expression didn't move. Captain, you are very young and a very old business. Code names change meaning with context. Kestrel was a test phrase built into the deception stream. Your grandfather was playing a part when he wrote it. He understood the stakes. He understood enough to try to warn someone, Adrian said, and someone didn't want to hear it. Pierce leaned forward an inch. Be careful, Captain. You're skirting accusations that would put you across the table from different people in a different room. People who do not offer bottled water. The room cooled a degree. Adrian felt the hollow under his ribs where fear liked to live. He also felt the weight of Eleanor's note in his pocket, small and steady. Back soon. Save me a dance. He thought of Thanksgiving tables with one chair left empty because no one knew where to put it. He thought of a folded flag that creased her hands. Here is my problem, he said, voice even. Your story explains everything and nothing. It fits any fact I bring and all the ones you don't show. It gives my family a ceremony and takes the truth out of our hands. Vale sighed as if sorry to be reasonable. Captain, there are other consequences. Your billet, your clearance, your next 10 years. Men have seen careers end for much less. And some men have seen wars end the wrong way because the right file stayed shut, Adrian said. Pierce let the smile go. We're not threatening you. We're giving you options. One of them is pleasant. Redding shifted again, then spoke for the first time. May I have a minute with Captain Cole? She didn't wait for an answer. Hallway. Outside, the corridor hummed. Vending machine glow made the floor look colder. Maya kept her voice low. I can't tell you what's in the sealed side of this. I don't have it. That should tell you something. About what? Adrian asked. About who's really running this. She glanced at the ceiling camera and kept her face turned away. You are not in a history problem. You are in a live one. He studied her. She had always been careful with words. She was careful now. What happens if I walk? They will file paperwork that makes it hard for you to breathe, she said. But if you sign, you won't sleep. In the room, Vale and Pierce waited with their papers squared. Adrian opened the door and sat. He picked up the pen. He didn't take off the cap. I appreciate the offer, he said. Vale's smile returned by half. Good, let's. I won't sign, Adrian said. He put the pen down. I won't transfer evidence without a bilateral agreement and proper chain. And I won't attach my name to a story I can't ask questions about. Silence. The kind that checks the locks. Pierce folded the papers with neat, irritated care. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Adrian said. But it will be mine. He stood. Vale did not. Pierce did, quickly, as if speed could put the shape back in the room. Captain, you should understand there are people beyond this office who. Redding's phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced, read, and her face changed. Adrian, she said, not Captain. She stepped in close, too close for the camera to read lips. Leave. Now. Don't go back to your hotel. Don't call me from your phone. What happened? He asked. Her eyes flicked to the folder under her arm and back. This isn't historical review anymore. The Marine outside the door straightened as the handle turned. Somewhere down the hall, 3 radios answered the same voice at once. Adrian didn't wait to hear the rest. He walked past the water, past the neat pen, past the men who offered closure like a folded flag, and into the corridor where the off-record warning still hung between them like a bridge he could choose only once. LeClaire's safe house sat over a shuttered print shop on a narrow street that smelled like ink and rain. He checked the stairwell, then the fire escape, and keyed them into a room with a long table and too many lamps. "We work fast," he said, "and we assume someone is already on the way." Frank set the oiled transmitter on a towel. Adrian placed the Larkspur packet beside it, then the copies from the archive, the evacuation order, the diary page, the sketch of the tree. He laid out his field camera, 2 encrypted drives, and a stack of evidence sleeves like cards. They started with the scanner. The glass warmed under the paper. The software hummed. Each page got 3 passes: color, grayscale, high contrast. Adrian named the files like a man laying track: Larkspur 001, Nailers to Lissa 002, Map of Alpha 003, and wrote hash values on a yellow pad so the bits hit witnesses. LeClaire opened a steel cash box and set down 2 keys on red tags. "Bank boxes," he said. "Different branches. We will place a drive in each. The clerk will stamp the time." Frank took a stool and began to write a timeline in a neat, angry hand. He listed years like coordinates: 1943, crash/attempt, 1945, testimony filed, 1953, Penrose car, 1961, Moreau Fall. Losses arranged in ink. He paused over a name, then kept going. "Who do we trust first?" he asked. 3 outlets, Adrian said. Different countries, different laws. He opened the secure laptop and spun up an onion route that would make the screen feel far away. US, UK, France. If one is pressured, 2 can publish. LeClaire watched the hall through the peephole and read messages on a second phone. "Embassy calls every hour," he said. They used new titles each time. Adrian built the loop. He pinged Lena Park at the Washington Ledger, Gareth Holt at the BBC Features Unit, Claire Roussel at Le Monde. He didn't send files yet. He sent a single line: "Stand by for war-era CI leak with live actors. Verify your air gap. Answer on your secondary." Lena answered first, secondary up. "Clean room ready." Gareth: "We're awake. Bring receipts." Claire: "Phone only." Then courier. Adrian set the camera on the table and looked into it. For a second, he only saw his own face and the way he had started to look like the family photographs when no one expected him to. He pressed record. "If you're me a day from now," he said, voice steady, "and you think you made a mistake, listen. You didn't." He wasn't lost on a routine run. He was used. He wrote the name Kestrel so someone would say it out loud. "That's our job." He paused, then added, quieter, "If you're me a year from now and you're tired, take the day. Then keep going." He clicked stop and slid the card into an envelope marked to future me and had the silly, solid thought that sometimes you had to be your own backup. LeClaire came back from the hall with a look that said the weather had changed. "The embassy filed a preliminary extradition notice with the federal prosecutor," he said. "Espionage, unauthorized access, handling of classified materials." "Against who?" Adrian asked. "You," LeClaire said, and half a breath, "unknown Belgian accomplices. They are rushing the paper. It will take them a day to turn preliminary into formal, but the pressure is real." Frank snorted. 60 years, and they still prefer paperwork to truth. Adrian felt the old hollow and the new anger stand together for the first time. "We publish before their paper lands," he said, "and we spread weight." They cloned the first drive to 3 more. LeClaire sealed one in a tamper bag and slid it into a small safe under the sink. The other 2 went into padded envelopes with bank box receipts clipped on top. Frank held each bag for a second longer than he needed to, as if giving the past time to climb inside. Adrian opened a new document and built a one-page explainer for the journalists. What it is: wartime operation brief, why it matters, coded leak impacting extractions, what's new on camera intimidation, embassy pressure, live code name Kestrel resurfaced. He attached the scans, the hash list, a photo of the envelope stamp, eyes only, and the cut edge where the hand-drawn map showed a river bend and extraction point alpha. He sent the packet to each newsroom's air-gapped intake with the subject for editor, multi-jurisdiction release/hold for coordination, and followed with a phone call through the secure link. Lena said, "We'll need independent verification of the bank transfers you mentioned in your outline." "Tomorrow," Adrian said. "We're building the financial tree now." Gareth said, "We'll stand up the legal team before we open this." "You may have just given our standards desk a long night." "Good," Adrian said. Claire said, "Bring me a French witness. A living one, if possible." "Working on it," Adrian said, looking at Frank. Frank lifted his chin. The printer struggled and then caught. Leclerc fed it a roll of labels and made neat white spines for the folders. Brief, names, map, diary, orders, TX note, Kestrel. He tucked a copy set into a brown envelope with a gendarmerie seal and wrote a magistrate's name on the flap. The safe house phone rang once, the line reserved for people who were not supposed to know it existed. Leclerc looked at the ID and let it ring. He wrote "Do not pick up" on a sticky note and pressed it over the handset like a bandage. They ate cheap sandwiches and 3 bites and went back to work. Adrian built a simple tree on the whiteboard, 17C in the center, arrows out to evac order 30 sept, officer train 27 sept, diary, larks into a trap 28 sept, map alpha, crash coordinates match, Bobby note, Kestrel. At the bottom, he wrote who signed, and a question mark. Leclerc's second phone buzzed in his pocket. He listened, said nothing, listened again, then covered the mouthpiece. "Front desk at your hotel," he said to Adrian. "Housekeeper tried your door. The latch was broken. The room is disturbed." Adrian's throat went dry. "What did they take?" "Nothing," Leclerc said, "because there was nothing to take." He listened a beat more, eyes on the floor. "But they searched the next room too. The one that shares your wall." "Who was in it?" Adrian asked. "No one," Leclerc said, and ended the call. The room was very quiet. Frank folded his hands on the table and looked at the transmitter as if it were a compass. "They're late," he said, not smiling. "They usually find my room sooner." Outside, a scooter whined by and faded. The safe house lights hummed. Adrian capped the marker and put it down. "We don't go back there," he said. "Not for anything." Leclerc nodded. "We're already gone." The safe house lights flickered once when the call came in. An unknown address, video request, no metadata. Leclerc's eyes met Adrian's. He tapped the table twice. Record. Adrian slid the laptop toward him, opened the CleanCam app, and toggled screen plus mic capture. A small red dot woke up in the corner. He accepted. An old man filled the frame. The camera sat a little low, so his chin looked stern, and the ceiling lights made a ring over fine white hair. Behind him, a plain wall, a flag's blue edge, the corner of a framed seal. He didn't introduce himself. "Captain Cole," he said, "you have something that belongs to the United States." "Colonel Raymond Kincaid," Adrian said evenly. He wanted the name on tape first. "Also known as Kestrel." A brief smile, like a checkmark. "Code names are for children and training wheels. We're adults." Frank started to laugh and then didn't. He leaned where the camera could see half his face. 60 years late," he said, voice dry as paper, and still afraid. Kincaid's eyes flecked. "Sergeant Calder, I assumed we'd be speaking over a hospital bed by now. You've been a resilient problem." "Resilient is what happens when liars live long," Frank said. LeClaire stood off camera, watching the hall through the peephole. He held up a finger. 1 minute. Kincaid clasped his hands. His knuckles were pale and careful. Let's skip the theater. You're about to upload stolen materials to reckless reporters. That's unsafe. It endangers Method's reputation and men. Return the documents. Delete your copies. Come to the embassy. We'll resolve this like adults who understand the world. The world where pilots are labeled expendable, Adrian asked. The world where a camp doesn't exist, but still evacuates on schedule? Kincaid tilted his head. The world where stability matters. Where you trade a pawn to keep a king. Where you make hard choices so children in Cleveland don't learn to hide under desks again. Spare us the chess, Frank said. You sold secrets and called it balance. Kincaid ignored him. Captain, you are not the first man to touch Larkspur. Most learned quickly that stories from old wars grow teeth if you feed them. I'm offering you a way out. Take it. Adrian kept his tone flat. Who else are you talking to today? Kincaid's mouth curved, not kindly. Your reporters, for example. Ms. Park is in a conversation with federal agents about handling stolen classified material. Mr. Holt is doing a voluntary security interview in London. Ms. Roussel has a French subpoena she didn't expect. Nobody is in danger if they cooperate. LeClaire's phone buzzed. 2 texts in a row. He held the screen where Adrian could see without moving the camera. Ledger. Lena pulled into brief with 2 agents. Devices boxed. Counsel present. BBC. Gareth off-grid. Legal says, hold. Adrian felt heat in his face, a quick flare that passed. He kept his voice the same. And if they don't cooperate? Kincaid's gaze slid to the edge of his frame and back, like a man checking a silent cue. You're not naive. You've already seen how rooms get searched when polite letters don't work. Frank leaned closer, the transmitter's oiled cloth under his hand. He tried to warn you, he said. Bobby wrote your name. He used the radio you didn't know he kept. Bobby Harlow was a brave boy, Kincaid said. He put on the costume we needed. He played the part. He died as planned. The rest is sentiment. LeClaire's phone buzzed again. Lamond, Claire just detained. DGSI wants sources. He mouthed all 3. Adrian made a mark with his nail on the table, a tiny white scratch where wood darkened. You're obstructing the press, Colonel. I'm protecting the peace, Kincaid said. There's a difference you'll appreciate when you've had a few more funerals. Frank laughed, this time all the way, a short, unkind sound that made him cough. You can't scare people who already buried their dead. Kincaid's smile thinned. Everyone scares. They just call it something else. Professional caution, legal prudence, career planning. He lifted one hand and let it fall on the desk, a quiet tap. Here is mine. In 1 hour your names will route to tasking cells who don't use lawyers or historians. I can still make that unnecessary, but the window closes. LeClaire counted under his breath, eyes at the peephole. Outside, footsteps climbed and paused. He held up 2 fingers. 2 men. He pointed down. Our floor. Adrian angled the laptop as if he were easing a picture, bringing more of Kincaid's background into frame. The seal resolved, an eagle ringed in words blurred by depth, but still a seal. The flag stars were the right blue. Let me put it plain, Adrian said. He kept his hands where the camera could see them. He wanted the posture in the recording. We have the brief, the names, the evacuation order, the diary page that calls your trap by the bird you like. We have the map and its coordinates. We have your own voice offering favors if we return evidence and threats if we don't. That is called witness intimidation. Kincaid didn't blink. It's called a warning. On camera, Adrian said. A knock sounded in the hall. Not the timid kind. 3 hard rap spaced like a drill. Leclerc made a slice with his hand. No one moves. Kincaid tilted his head again, studying Adrian as if he were a slide under magnification. Captain Cole, this ends with you standing at a podium receiving a neatly folded flag, or with you standing at a smaller table answering for why you harmed national security. You get to pick the furniture. Do you want to say that last part again? Adrian asked, gentle as he could make it. Kincaid looked right down the camera, the way men who had practiced it for years looked when they wanted a message to land. Walk to the embassy, he said, slow and patient. Or we walk through your life. The red dot blinked in the corner, quiet and certain. Thank you, Adrian said, and ended the call. Outside the door, the footsteps waited. Inside the room, the recorder wrote time into a file name on its own. Kestrel. Leclerc pointed to the back stairs. Frank folded the transmitter's cloth with careful hands. Adrian saved the video. The hash popped up. He copied it twice and printed it once, the characters marching across the page like a small, exact army. The knock came again, harder. He slid the fresh page into an evidence sleeve, sealed it, and wrote the time. The red dot kept blinking. They left by the back stairs with the transmitter wrapped and the drive warm in Adrian's pocket. Leclerc took them through alleys to a vet with a printer's logo still on the side. He drove without the radio on. Airport, he said. No main terminal. The cargo bay smelled like rubber and cold metal. A Belgian officer stamped papers Leclerc didn't let Adrian read and shook his hand once hard. Mon courage, he said. The flight ran dark. Frank dozed with his chin on his chest and woke every 20 minutes the way old soldiers do. Adrian watched the red light over the door and felt the hours like a rope he could either pull or be pulled by. Over the Atlantic, they set the clocks to GMT on 3 devices and wrote the time in pen on a white label, 0600 GMT/sync. They landed in Auckland at 0400 local. The air was cold and bright. A woman in plain clothes met them at the tarmac with a folder and a badge. Inspector Talia Nada, she said. New Zealand Security Intelligence Service. You're safe for now. Come. Her car ran quiet up a hill to a low building that could have been anything. Inside, a small room waited with 2 desks, a kettle, and a map of the Pacific pinned with 3 red dots. You're out of NATO's shadow here, Talia said, sliding her card into a slot. That buys time. Not peace. Adrian set the folder on the table and breathed through the jet lag. Frank stood at the window and looked at a harbor the color of steel. He smiled once, without humor. Always wanted to see this place, he said. Didn't plan on bringing ghosts. They went to work. Talia brought in 2 techs, who spoke in short sentences and moved like carpenters. They built a small city from cables, 1 machine offline for files, 1 machine online for messages, 1 little box that mirrored to servers in Sydney, Wellington, and Cape Town. 3 mirrors, the taller tech said. Different jurisdictions, different ISPs. If they pull one, the others hold. Adrian laid out the packets. He checked the hashes against the list he'd written in Brussels. They matched. He lined up the published clocks on the wall. Sydney 1600 hours, Wellington 1800 hours, Cape Town 8 o'clock, all pointing to 0600 GMT like compass needles. Hardeners? Talia asked. Sydney Ledger, Wellington Post, Cape Town Gazette, Adrian said. Editors are awake. Lawyers are grumpy. Good, she said. Grumpy means careful. He called each editor on a clean line. We publish together, he said. No one jumps the time. If they hit you with orders, you call this number and stall. The editors agreed. One sounded excited, one tired, one afraid. All 3 said, send it. Adrian copied the folder Larkspur and released to each mirror. He added the short explainer and a note for readers that said what would be in the next tranche. The on-camera call from Kincaid, the diary page, the evac order, the map, the note that named Kestrel. He set the scheduler, then checked the clocks again. He took Eleanor's note from his pocket and smoothed the creases with his thumb. The pencil line was paler than it had been last time he read it. Back soon. Save me a dance. He read it once for her and once for himself. Ready? Talia asked. Ready, he said. They hit arm on the scheduler. The screen showed 3 bars waiting to turn green at the same second. The room felt full of air that hadn't decided what to be yet. The phone on Talia's desk rang. She listened, said, "Mum," and covered the mouthpiece. Wellington just got a call from the American embassy, she said. Polite at first, then less polite. They're floating a mutual legal assistance request. On what grounds? Adrian asked. Handling of classified materials. Interference with ongoing investigations. All the usual hats, she said. She uncovered the phone. Yes. We'll take the request in writing. Yes. We understand your concern. She hung up and smiled without her eyes. They'll try to make your story illegal at the border, she said. Borders are slow. You've already crossed. Leclerc wasn't there to pace, so Adrian paced for him. He drank tea he didn't taste and helped Frank list names for the witness tree. Living archivists, retired signalsmen, a baker's grandson near Hoofelies who remembered his grandfather's story about a pilot and a tree. Talia took each name and quietly assigned a check. At 5:12 GMT, Sydney texted, "Our ISP just got a national security advisory." At 5:18, Cape Town, Gov Council asking about temporary restraint. At 5:23, Wellington, court clerk, unavailable. Talia sent the same reply 3 times. Standby. Publish at 0600 GMT. Will cover. At 5:41 GMT, Adrian's secure phone buzzed with a blocked ID. He let it vibrate until it stopped. It buzzed again with a message from an unknown. Too late to be smart. He thought of Kincaid's voice and the way men who believed in leverage liked to count to 60 slowly. He thought of the search in his hotel room and the knock that came in 3. He looked at the clocks. 5:47. Whatever happens, Frank said, we already did the brave part. Adrian nodded. He opened the folder one more time and looked at the Larkspur header, the names, the map, the note. Pride and anger stood in him like 2 men shaking hands across a table. He put Eleanor's scrap back in his pocket. 5:59 turned to 6 o'clock. The 3 bars on the screen blinked green at once. A low beep sounded and then stopped. A link popped on each mirror like a light coming on in 3 cities. Live, the tall text said. Phones began to move like quiet weather. Sydney, posted. Legal holding. Traffic spiking. Wellington, up. Front page. Cape Town, up. Mirror holding. 2 minutes later, Talia's second phone lit with 3 messages from 3 countries. She read them in a line, her mouth a thin line. France, she said. UK, US. Each regrets the leak. Each commits to internal review. 5 minutes later, the Washington Ledger, not in their loop, pushed an alert anyway. Senior CIA liaison announces immediate retirement. The BBC site, where Gareth had gone off-grid, posted a bulletin. Deputy Director of ME liaison steps down pending inquiry. A French wire ran a short. DGSI advisor resigns, CITES health. Frank let out a breath that shook. Resignations, he said. Ripples, Talia said. The phone rang again, a hard tone, the kind that belonged to red folders. She listened a long time and set it down gently. That was the Prime Minister's office, she said. They want to know why 3 allied agencies are having a very bad morning. She looked at the clocks. 6:11 GMT. By tonight, she said, you'll see more. At 6:23 GMT, the room became weather. Phones blew sideways. Screens refreshed and refreshed again. Headlines learned the name Larkspur and the word Kestrel. The map, the diary, the evacuation order, all there. The clip of Kincaid's video call loaded, buffered, and played with captions. Talia skimmed 3 feeds at once. Ledger up with the brief. Wellington front page holding. Cape Town mirrors clean. Copies everywhere. Leclerc messaged from Brussels. Belgian prosecutor acknowledges receipt. Magistrate opening an inquiry. Keep copies off-site. Frank sat with his hands flat on the table and stared at the little red progress bars as if they were heart monitors. Took 60 years, he said. Now it's 30 seconds in a phone. At 7:05 GMT, an American network pushed a breaking alert. Former Pentagon liaison Call Raymond Kincaid detained for questioning. A photo followed, older, careful, led down a corridor by 2 men in suits who were not supposed to be in a photo. Talia nodded once. They didn't want that image. Someone inside gave it to someone outside. At 7:12, the BBC, safely quoting sources, ran, 2 NATO intelligence officials resign amid Larkspur fallout. At 7:19, a French wire added a third, for health. By 7:30, the inbox on Adrian's clean machine filled with formal words wearing the same suit: demand, restraint, prejudice, harm, unlawful possession. Talia read, sorted, and stacked. Blowback, she said. Legal storms. They'll try injunctions, then try you. Extradition? Adrian asked. They'll file again, she said. We'll say no again. Publishing truth isn't espionage in this building. Leclerc, embassy furious. Also suddenly polite. Curious mix. Gareth sent a voice note at last. Back on. Lawyers fed and watered. We're live. Lena texted a photo of a conference room full of tired people and pizza boxes. Hold the line, Captain. Claire's editor wrote in cool French, Continuez. Adrian stepped into the hall and called his father. The ring sounded like distance. When his dad picked up, he didn't say hello. I saw the flag on TV, his father said. And your name? Adrian breathed. I had to, Dad. A long silence. Just air and a tiny click on the line like an old clock counting. When his father spoke again, his voice had changed. He'd be proud, he said. Your grandmother, too. A second silence, shorter, then a small laugh. You know, she always said it wasn't routine. I know, Adrian said, and felt something unclench that had sat in his chest since childhood. I'll call again when I can. Do that, his father said, and get some sleep sometime. He went back to the room. Talia handed him a thin folder. For your nerves, she said. Inside were printouts. 3 resignations, 2 internal memos promising reviews, 1 press release from an agency that had never said sorry in public. And this, she added, passing a fresh sheet across. U.S. Attorney filed a motion to restrain further publishing. Denied, for now. Good, Frank said. They can sue the weather next. Adrian sat, opened a new message, and pushed the Kestrel call to the mirrors. The caption read, On camera warning to halt publication. He watched the first minute with the sound off and saw Kincaid's eyes when he delivered the line about furniture. The comments filled fast, some angry, some grateful, many quiet. The world was talking to itself. By late morning Auckland time, a second wave hit. An oversight committee in Washington announced preliminary detention for Kincaid pending charges under statutes rarely used. Parliament questions rolled in London. A French minister avoided cameras and then faced them anyway. Talia's phone rang with a tone he hadn't heard before. She listened, asked 2 questions, and covered the receiver. They're offering you protection beyond our fence, she said, and they're asking for something. What? She handed over a second phone with a secure line already open. Washington, not the embassy. A woman came on the line. Tired, precise. Captain Cole, my name is not for recording. I speak for a working group that's about to have a name. We're building an International Intelligence Oversight Commission, temporary at first. We need 3 things: your Larkspur chain of custody, your methodology, and you. Adrian blinked. You want me to? To help us audit cases like this, she said. Across borders. Across decades. You've already done the first mile. We need the rest. What about the charges? He asked. Different office, she said. Different fight. But I can tell you the mood has shifted. Sunshine does that. He looked at Frank. The old man watched him the way men watch a friend step from a dock onto a moving boat. Think before you answer, Talia murmured, covering the phone with her palm for a second. This is more rooms and more paper. It's also more doors open. Adrian put the phone back to his ear. Send details. You'll have a brief by nightfall, the woman said. And Captain? Whatever you decide, you move the needle. Don't let anyone teach you to forget that. The line clicked. Talia raised an eyebrow. Well? Later, Adrian said. He wasn't ready to put the word yes in the air where it would start arranging his days. The afternoon stretched. Reporters called. Lawyers bluffed. Somewhere in Virginia, a man who had called himself Kestrel sat in a room with no flag and waited for someone to read him a list. Adrian closed the laptop and leaned his forehead on his hands. He felt the note in his pocket through the fabric and took it out. The pencil was thinner every time he unfolded it, as if words wore down with duty. Back soon. Save me a dance. He put it away, stood, and looked at the clocks. In Washington, it was still morning. In London, just past lunch. In Brussels, the light would be going soft. Talia set a fresh page on the table. It bore a simple letterhead and a line at the bottom for a signature. Commission, Initial Advisory Panel. Sleep, she said. Then decide. Adrian picked up the page and turned it over. Blank on the back. He smiled once, tired and real. Maybe the first thing I do, he said, is make sure these forms have a place for the families. Frank nodded. Start the right way. Outside, a gull cried over the harbor. Inside, the printer started up again, spitting pages for a future that had just become Adrian's business. He wasn't sure yet if he was ready. The invitation lay on the table, waiting.